Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. In today's show, we look at the reactions across the political spectrum to Justin Trudeau's resignation. And we also focus today on the Punjab, where a lot's currently happening as the community struggles yet again for freedom. Amritpal Singh announces he's establishing a new political party, while several high-profile figures, including his own father and several MPs, are arrested as they protest peacefully in the region. Another sign of India's declining democracy. And we also take a look at the ongoing plight of the farmers there and examine just in more detail what it is exactly that they're protesting about. All this and more in today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. It's nice to see everybody back after a long break, and we've started to see everybody posting their comments again. We love them. Keep them coming. Thanks for joining us.
Indeed we do. And James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And yes, indeed, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments which have indeed been filling up below the video. So thank you, as always, for those. Right, James, let's get things started. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Of course, there's still a lot of reaction coming out to the resignation of Mr. Trudeau, or Prime Minister Trudeau by some. But of course, we know that the response was coming from all of the levels of politicians, both here in Canada and abroad. But what we are seeing is that instead of really focusing on where we're going next immediately, there is a lot of just utilization of it as a platform for an election. We know that will happen probably November of 2025 in Canada, but of course the political sphere right now, it is heating up, and instead of showing any appreciation really for what Trudeau has done over the last 10 years, the opposition as well as the NDP leaders and others are using it just to sound their concerns about U.S. tariffs, where Canada stands at this point, and of course to launch their own, essentially launching their own campaign fights for the coming year. So let's take a look at what they have to say.
Good day. Canadians desperate to turn the page on this dark chapter in our history might be relieved today that Justin Trudeau is finally leaving. But what has really changed? Every Liberal MP in power today and every potential Liberal leadership contender fighting for the top job helped Justin Trudeau break the country over the last 9 years. All Liberal politicians actively worked to pass into law the job-killing inflationary carbon tax, a tax that Carbon Tax Carney endorsed in his book. All supported a law quadrupling the tax over the next 5 years. All voted for or actively supported Trudeau's out-of-control spending, debt, and immigration. All passed Trudeau's housing policies that doubled the cost of homes. All Liberal politicians helped pass catch-and-release bail and house arrest for the most rampant reoffenders. Policies that increased violent crime 50%, gun crime 116%, and hate crime by 250%. So given that Liberal MPs and leadership contenders unanimously supported everything Trudeau has done, why dump him now, right before an election? Have they had a change of heart? Is it because they feel guilty that they doubled housing costs, hiked taxes, unleashed crime, broke immigration, forced a quarter of the population into poverty? No. They continued supporting Trudeau when he did all of those things. No, their only objection is that he is no longer popular enough to win an election and keep them in power. They want to protect their pensions and paycheck by sweeping their hated leader under the rug months before an election to trick you and then do it all over again.
They're not going to get better than that, everybody. That's a peak joke for 2025. Mark your calendars. I'd like to just open by thanking Prime Minister Trudeau for his service to Canada over his time as Prime Minister. Without doubt, there were moments of frustration that I'm sure went in both directions, but we got some big things done together. Childcare, he got the country through a global pandemic, and there's a big shift for him and for his family. I want to wish them luck with their next steps. I'd also like to take a moment to address the tariff threat from the president-elect in the United States. We are continuing our work with employers, with business in the province, with labor, bringing people together to ensure we have a unified BC response. As part of a unified Canadian response, I will be joining with the premiers this week to discuss our Council of Federation response, as well as our plan to visit Washington, D.C.
Your families. As the country saw this morning, the Prime Minister has said that he was going to step down as Prime Minister. But that doesn't mean he's no longer Prime Minister for the next month or 2 months. We need the Prime Minister to focus 100% on the U.S. tariffs. We have 14 days left before elect President Trump gets inaugurated, and we need to focus to make sure these tariffs don't move forward, and if they do move forward, we need to make sure that the federal government has a strong plan. The Prime Minister said he'd sit down with all the premiers, face-to-face meeting. I still want to hold him to that promise.
Thanks, Nina. Justin Trudeau's Liberals have let down Canadians. They have let you down when it comes to the cost of homes. He's let you down when it comes to the cost of living. And frankly, it's not just Justin Trudeau. It's every Liberal minister, every Liberal MP who looked down their nose at you when people were saying we can't make ends meet. We are struggling with the cost of living. So it doesn't matter who the next Liberal leader is. They've let you down. They do not deserve another chance. They're more interested in themselves than the struggles of Canadians. We've got serious threats of Donald Trump and tariffs that put in question hundreds and thousands of Canadian jobs. And instead of focusing on you and protecting your jobs, they're worried about themselves. And we have another serious threat to the middle class in Canada, and that is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want to cut from the middle class to give to their rich CEO friends. They want to cut your pensions. They want to cut health care. They want to cut dental care, all to make the rich CEO buddies even richer. Under Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, they want to see CEOs get richer and richer and the middle class fall further behind. That's a serious fight in front of us. And I know what that fight's all about. I remember meeting seniors in our country who told me that they are living in pain because they can't fix their teeth. They can't get their teeth looked after. And to hear heartbreaking stories from these seniors. I remember one in particular who told me she's got to choose between eating and sleeping because if she eats at night, she's in so much pain she can't fall asleep. And if she wants to sleep that night, she has to skip a meal, not eat dinner, go to bed hungry. I promised those seniors that I would fight like hell to make sure they could actually get their teeth looked after. And the Liberals said no at every turn. We proposed solutions. We proposed ideas to get this done. They said no. Even when we convinced them to move forward with dental care, they said it would take a decade to put in place. We said, no, seniors need this now. We fought hard and we delivered it.
So you can see that it was more of a campaign announcement than anything when it came to the leader of the Conservatives, of the NDP. Meanwhile, the provincial premiers, both David Eby, followed by Doug Ford of Ontario, they really are looking forward to working together with their counterparts across the country, but also they want to hold Trudeau to his commitment to meet with them and actually come together with a united front against any potential tariffs coming in from the U.S. And that seemed to be the one thing that they all agreed on was the concerns about the tariffs coming in from the U.S. And, to show how serious it is, I have family members or, extended family down in the U.S., and they're actually asking what's going on and when Canada's going to be a part of the U.S. They're actually thinking that it's a serious issue that, and I must give it to Justin Trudeau on his way out. He today made a statement directed towards Donald Trump and very pointedly telling him that it'll be a snowball's chance in hell before Canada becomes a part of the U.S. So I think that pretty much said it very clear. And in response, of course, Trump came back saying that it was his doing to force Trudeau to resign, and that he's going to really push Canada to be a part of the U.S. through basically economic war, to force us into an economic turmoil that we will have no choice but to go to the U.S. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how things transition, because, of course, as Doug Ford laid out, that Justin Trudeau still has a month or 2 months, depending on how long it takes for the Liberals to appoint a new leader. And really, that's going to be dependent, but it's going to transition through the inauguration in the U.S. and the apparent introduction of these sanctions and of tariffs. So he's still going to have to guide the country through that transition period, and that's going to be a very important part for Canada and for the nation. Now, of course, we can say what we will. We, as Canadians, we don't all agree with the stance and the position and the work of Justin Trudeau. But at the end of the day, as I said last night, Angus, it's a job that is one of the most thankless in the world. And as they say, we could get smarter politicians, but those people are smart enough to stay out of politics. So, we're just stuck with what we've got at this point, and we'll have to watch going forward. But at the end of the day, we may not agree with Trudeau's politics, but he was there through a lot of challenging times. A lot of the conservative vitriol is about homelessness, about housing costs, but those are actually handled by the provincial governments and have very little to do with the federal government in Canada. As that goes on, of course, they'll bring these talking points, but again, it is not something that really has a lot to do with the federal government. It's more to do with management by provincial governments. So it just shows the disconnect between what people are really perceiving as the issues versus what really are the issues. And I think that is the inability to get things done in Parliament, and that is a result of the Liberals, the NDP, the Bloc Québécois, and the Conservatives all as one group not being able to make things happen and to get things moving forward. So I think that there's a lot of blame to be laid at the feet of all politicians, not just the Liberal Party at this time, Angus.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said effectively that politics just doesn't attract the right sort of people, and it's I would say that's reflected right across certainly all the democracies that I know, and definitely here in the UK, is that for some reason I think just the very nature of politics, modern politics in the modern democratic world, or quasi-democratic world, let's call it. We get career politicians. We don't get people who enter politics essentially primarily through conviction. They tend to enter politics as a career. That's definitely what we've suffered here in the UK. And as a result, our current crop of politicians, and I'm looking at all parties for this, are a very, very low quality, low standard of people on many levels, whether it's their own principles, whether it's their own capabilities. They're just all they're very good at is memorising lots and lots of statistics and manipulating them and delivering them with very effective rhetoric and sound bites. But does that necessarily mean they're good at running a country, running an economy, running a society? No, it absolutely does not. And I think that is where, and again, you can go into a whole school of thought and a great political analysis of the failings and the flaws of modern democracies, but that's another issue. But certainly, yes, I think in Canada, it's what we're seeing is unfolding is, well, here it starts. So here we go. It's turning into the typical democratic bun fight that we witness across. Well, recently we saw it in the US with their recent elections. We saw it here halfway through last year here in the UK when we had our elections. It's just the same old, and all the parties wade in, they sniff opportunity and say, right, now let's tear down the previous administration because we can promise that we're going to be better. And so the same cycle begins all over again. Watching those reactions, I think that two of them particularly stood out. Poilievre, of course, first of all, there's just something that makes my skin crawl about him, I have to say. I don't know much about him, but from what I've seen, even though ironically he probably represents more of my own personal politics, there's just something about him that just really makes me sit uncomfortably in my seat when I hear him speak. And weirdly, it reflects the Conservative Party here in the UK, where ironically, again, it reflects my personal politics, but the politicians themselves just make my skin crawl. There's something about them. There's something just not... There's just something almost sleazy about them. And it's weird that even the Canadian Conservatives do the same to me as well. So yeah, and again, I could have written his speech for him. It's all very predictable. It's all very, we can do better. And look how bad Trudeau was. But as I said, ironically, Trudeau, I'm no fan of Trudeau. But as I keep saying, he did an awful lot of good for the community. Absolutely laudable time in office. Everything he did was not all good. He did a lot of bad things. And actually, ironically, he wasn't... there was, I think, in terms of his relationship with the Sikh community, it wasn't all good. There was a very controversial trip to India not that long ago, which upset a lot in the community, etc., etc. So Trudeau himself was no angel. But as I say, the one thing he did stand up for was the Sikh community when transnational repression and the murder of Najjar occurred. And he was an absolute... I mean, he symbolised everything that the democratic world should stand for. So, as I kept saying at the time and continue to say, well done to him for that. But it's funny, isn't it, that, 9 years he was in power? I think here in the UK, our longest serving PMs, about the same 9-10 years, Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, both figures that polarised love or hate, depending on your side of the political spectrum. Trudeau, exactly the same. They seem to reach a shelf life of about 9 or 10 years and don't really seem to be able to go on longer. I think human beings just think, enough's enough, doesn't matter how good or bad they were, just enough's enough. And I think he'd reached his shelf life. And I think this year will unfold what it will unfold. But as I say, there were two particular standout speeches, if that's the right word, from that video. As I say, Poilievre was one which made my skin crawl. I think the other one which really stuck out was Jagmeet Singh of the NDP. I think he again, hit the nail on the head with his speech. He said, "Look, these guys, the Conservatives." And indeed Trudeau, to some degree, they have stood up for helping their rich mates, the CEOs, as he referred to them. And I think, interesting, this does reflect a big criticism here of the Conservative Party here, the right wing here, but strange enough, the left wing as well. Tony Blair's government was actually criticised for this on the left wing, and indeed Starmer's government to some degree is being criticised for this to some degree, is they're looking after their wealthy globalist mates with all their policies, their high tax policies and their social policies are almost designed to suck the wealth from the lower and the middle class and suck it upwards to that ruling 1% elite. That is what seems to be happening. And no matter who gets into power, and we here in the UK, we have two main parties on the left and the right, but they both essentially, you couldn't slide a piece of paper between their policies. They both seem to represent their globalist masters, and I wonder if that's reflected in Canadian politics. But as I say, it was Jagmeet Singh who stood out really in those reactions, where again, there was an air of sincerity about him. There was an air of genuineness. And again, I wonder if his politics are more reflected in his religious background, his Sikhi background and his Sikhi principles. Because, of course, he is a Sikh and he does come from that sort of background that is so much nurtured by Sikhi principles, and that, in effect, will nurture his own principles. Is that reflected in the likes of Poilievre and all the other politicians who are now vying for power? I can pretty put hand on heart and safely say I bet they're probably not. I bet they are probably more the career politicians rather than driven by principles. So yes, I think the one thing missing in democratic politics across the Western world now, James, is a lack of principles. I think we are seeing too many career politicians and not enough politicians driven by genuine principles. And I think this is where the Sikh community has so much to offer Western politics, because of course they are driven, and their whole, even the internal political system of the Sikh community is driven by Sikh principles, and therefore driven by morality and the fundamental rights of humanity. And again, that is not reflected in elsewhere, sadly, in politics. So I think all we can do is encourage the community to step up to the plate, get involved in local politics, because what Sikhi represents is actually what is sadly missing, I would say, in Western democratic politics, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I would actually put a challenge out there for people to learn more about Jagmeet Singh and his principles and his policies. And I think that historically the NDP has not seen a huge support across the country as a whole. But I think, as I said last night, I think there's an opportunity here for the NDP to really get a foothold in and grab more seats in Parliament. I don't know if they have enough to do an upset and a win in terms of the Prime Minister's office, but I do believe that they've got a prime opportunity if they focus and get the right message out and get it out effectively. I think there's a lot of opportunity for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP to make huge inroads this year, Angus, and we'll have to watch and see as we move closer to November in the election, or sooner if it's called at that point. But as we talk about politics and impression and rights and all of that, let's take a shift here, Angus, and go over to the Punjab and talk about the farmers' protest that we know has been going on for years and continues to be a major struggle there. Now, I've recently been provided some images and some video clips, among other information about more violence that broke out throughout the holiday season with the different strikes and the different protests going on. However, because I haven't been able to verify a lot of it yet, I'm going to hold off on showing those videos because I want to make sure that they are more legitimate, or I want to just give more confirmation to them and make sure that we're bringing the accurate videos and accurate information without it just being, some person or individual sending me fake videos. So again, I haven't been able to verify them enough that I'm comfortable with showing them, but I thought that it was important to take a look though at what is going on and what is behind the farmers' protests and what they are looking to achieve through the ongoing struggle that they have been fighting for years. Now, we know that there have been hunger strikes, there have been lives lost, and there has been a fair amount of violence and protest going on throughout India, especially in the Punjab region. But they've also recently had a day of protest that shut down hundreds of trains, shut down hundreds of roads, and really caused a lot of shutdown in terms of business and government offices, most notably on the 30th of December, right before the new year. And with that, I thought, let's start the new year and take a look at what it is that they are looking for. And there are 14 demands. And I'll go through them quickly here and give each one my opinion on it, because I think that some of them are in there that are unrealistic, that may actually be counterproductive, but at the same time may be put in there just so that there are what we call throwaways when there are contract negotiations. Each side will put in certain issues that they can drive towards a settlement on another issue by saying that we'll throw this away, but we need to really focus on these important parts of it. So that's what I refer to as a throwaway. When I'm negotiating contracts, I know that I've always got a few in there that I'm willing to give up that really are there for that purpose as a distraction to make the other side feel like they're getting something more than they actually are. And that's just a part of contract negotiations in business. Now, number one, a law guaranteeing the purchase of all crops at minimum support price for farmers across the country, with crop prices fixed as per the recommendations. Now, this commission made those recommendations, and that is a fair and equitable way to help handle or help provide some stability to the markets and to the farmers in terms of revenue and income, to allow them to be able to afford to continue on farming and not lose even more of it to the commercial or corporate farms. Now, number two, a complete debt waiver for farmers and laborers. Now, that could be a little trickier, but I think that in terms of a complete debt waiver, I don't see that being a realistic option in the big picture. But I do think that it is a great starting point to be able to get some type of relief for the farmers and the laborers. It may not be a complete debt waiver, but at least some kind of partial aid, I think, could really come into play there. And that's a really key part, and I think an important part to have in there. And again, it's not a throwaway, but it is something that is driving at a full waiver, but a partial maybe where they're willing to work with on that. Number 3, the reinstatement of the Land Acquisition Act of 2013. That should be nationwide, ensuring written consent from farmers and 4 times compensation based on collector rates should be given before land acquisition. As we know, there's been some forced acquisitions, some bulldozer renovations, and such throughout the nation. And that is where they've just gone in and basically expropriated the land with absolutely no compensation or very minimal compensation. This has happened not only on behalf of government, but also on behalf of some of the corporations that are looking to get inroads and control the food stability and the food markets. Again, a lot of profits can be had if you are a corporation that monopolizes, the agriculture industry. So again, justice for the victims of the October 2021 Kiri violence and punishment for the culprits. Yes, that is an essential part of any negotiation, is to hold people to account for the violence that's happened against the farmers and against other minorities throughout the country. And again, this is something that you and I talk about a lot, Angus, and that is crime and punishment and holding people accountable. And that's something that has been lacking in India. If you have power or just any position of authority, it tends to go a long way and gets you out of a lot of positions. And as well, whether or not you belong to a minority group can have a huge influence on whether you are punished in the criminal justice system or not. Number 5, India should withdraw from the World Trade Organization and suspend all free trade agreements. I honestly think that's one of those throwaway items. I don't think that withdrawing from the WTO would be a realistic option for India. I think that with their opportunities and what they're trying to drive at in terms of expanded trade and globalization of their markets and their revenue, I think that that one is one of those throwaway items that is in there, but I don't see it as being a realistic achievement. But hey, if they can achieve something to that end that they really find benefits them, then I'm all for that as well. But I just don't think that's a realistic option. And also because the WTO can help to subsidize or assist with research, development, technological advances in farming and so forth. So compensation on number 7, compensation for farmers who died during the protest. Now, some of the families of the farmers who have died in the protest, they have been offered government positions as well as certain levels of compensation, but it's only been a few that have gotten those the government positions. Why, people ask, is it that they want government positions? And that is because of the fact that there is a certain level of comfort that comes with those positions, whether it comes to regular income on a monthly basis, whether it comes to retirement plans, it comes to job security. There's a lot of things there that really can help to not only bring forward an individual in life and status, but also their entire family. So they can really help with the extended family, medical, dental, all kinds of different things that this brings them that they would not otherwise have. The electricity amendment should be repealed, and honestly, I don't know much about that. I didn't get a chance to look into that as much, but I will definitely be looking more into that part as well. I know that there are a lot of issues surrounding whether it is electricity, oil, gas, and other energy throughout India, and making sure that its availability is expanded to those in rural or remote communities. So again, we'll look into that a bit more later. Now, also ensuring that 200 days of employment per year with a daily wage of 700 rupees. And that, again, it's going to be one of those things that's hard to really guarantee under that regulation, but it is something that they could look at in terms of employment insurance and other things. So there's a couple others I'm just going to go through quickly because, again, we are running short on time already. I'm going over, so let's move through these quickly. Is strict penalties and fines for companies producing fake seeds, pesticides, and fertilizer. They have also asked for measures to improve seed quality. So again, there are people out there taking advantage of the farmers, selling them bogus seeds or seeds that have absolutely no shelf life left to them. And of course, that is a huge expense for farmers. And when they see nothing yielding in the fields, of course, at the end of the day, that pushes them right under. Establishment of a national commission for chili, turmeric, and other spices. That I don't see as a big deal. I think that should be a fairly easy way for the government to move forward to support the farmers. I think that is a more than realistic and achievable demand. I think that's easy enough and understandable enough for that. So again, implementation of the Constitution's fifth schedule, ensuring the rights of tribal communities over water, forests, and land, stopping the exploitation of tribal lands by corporations. And I would even throw in there that it has to do a lot with pollution and toxins being dumped into their water as well upstream. So that's important. And then, of course, we see justice for Mr. Singh, who was killed on February 23rd. Again, this has to do with holding people accountable and who ordered the murder and the violence on other farmers as well. The National Policy Framework for Agriculture Marketing shouldn't be implemented. Farm union leaders say it's an attempt to implement the repealed farm laws through back doors. And of course, we know that there was some involvement with the Adani Group in that, and we know how that's worked out in terms of corruption, Angus. It is quite a list of demands, but I think a lot of important ones there, with the odd throwaway as a negotiating tool.
Yeah, I think it's interesting looking at all these actually in turn, because we have talked about the protests a lot over the last year and longer actually. And looking through those listed demands, I think there are every single one of them, almost without exception, is a perfectly reasonable demand.
Yeah.
Certainly from the agricultural fraternity. I mean, yes, there are one or two there like withdrawing from the WTO. I mean, I did raise an eyebrow thinking, why would you want to actually withdraw from the WTO and cancel all trade agreements? Again, as you say, James, maybe that was just sort of thrown in there just as a part of a negotiating ploy. Right. But other than that, yeah, I think all of them are very reasonable. And the other one that stuck out, of course, there was that highlights an awful lot of these issues is the martyrdom of Shubkaran Singh, who we reported on that last year, who was shot, it appears, by security forces. And this does highlight what actually has happened in the Punjab and across those border regions where the protests have been occurring, is the police response has been disproportionate. It's been actually quite shocking. It's not abnormal for India, but certainly for those of us in the West who constantly rush to support our farmers, who have indeed themselves been protesting. But when we see the reaction of the Indian police and how they treated what is essentially a basic peaceful democratic process demanding for just simple fundamental human rights. When we see tear gas being launched, we see real bullets being fired, rubber bullets on regular occasions, salt pellets have been fired. The injuries that actually have been photographed after some of these protests are absolutely horrific, notwithstanding the actual death of Shubkaran Singh, who was shot it appears, by an armed policeman with a live round. That in itself is a huge cause for concern. Why were the police carrying live rounds at a protest, at a democratic protest? There shouldn't have been a live round within a square mile of a democratic process. Rubber bullets and tear gas are bad enough, but live ammunition should not be on location like that unless there is a genuine threat to life and you're facing, or there has to be a realistic belief that your protesters are themselves armed with live rounds. There's absolutely no way that live ammunition was seen on the part of the protesters. But yes, but certainly seeing tear gas and other things like rubber bullets and salt pellets used, many protesters have been blinded. They've had broken limbs and worse. It's absolutely shocking that we see this in a supposedly democratic nation. And I think, we must continue this plight of the farmers because, of course, the mainstream Indian Godi press, the Godi media, are not really reporting this to any level. And, of course, they're always reporting a very one-sided narrative. It is the pro-Modi narrative that they report. So, of course, your average Indian viewer in India has absolutely no idea really what these protests are about, because they are fed a completely nonsense narrative. They don't see the violence that's been perpetrated against these primarily Sikh protesters. And they, of course, the Hindutva social media have been all over this regularly since it ever first started, saying, oh, they're all Khalistanis, they're all terrorists. The whole protest has been hijacked by terrorists, which is absolute complete nonsense. The fact that there are Khalistani protesters amongst the protesters, that's not in dispute. There are Khalistan flags there by the hundreds, by the thousands even. There's nothing wrong with that. It is supposedly a democratic country, but that does not mean they are terrorists, and it certainly does not mean that they are protesting about Khalistan. They're essentially protesting about their basic human rights. And Khalistan just also happens to be an extension of that, because, of course, as we constantly proclaim here, the establishment of Khalistan will allow the Punjab and allow the Sikh community their own sovereign nation upon which they can exercise their basic human rights, which they are currently and have been denied since 1947. So, I think, James, it's very important that we keep highlighting what these farmers are fighting for. They are genuine demands, they are basic human rights, and they are designed to highlight the fact that the Indian government under the BJP are just protecting their own vested billionaire wealthy globalist interests, the corporate farmers. It is their wealthy mates that they are protecting, and they are the people who are trying to drive out the small farmers from the Punjab. And it's these small farmers that are essentially feeding India. They are the backbone. They are the food chain. They are the source of the food chain for India. And if you're driving these people out and replacing them with corporate farmers, all you're going to end up with is mass-produced, low-yield crops that actually are probably genetically modified and contain pesticides, contain herbicides, contain all sorts of chemicals that sadly are affecting the Western world just as much. And we are trying to fight back against this. It means that your own food chain in India is going to get poisoned by chemicals. Is that really what you want? Because your average small farmer struggles at a subsistence level, but at least his crop, whilst the yields might not be as high, at least they tend to be more organic than the corporate farmers. Bear that in mind. So yes, James, I think there are a lot of issues on this one, and we continue to support the farmers in their desperate plight.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, we could even look at the numbers of suicides that they say are impacting the farmers, but how many of those are actually extrajudicial deaths that have been at the hands of government or police agencies that they tried to cover up by claiming as suicides? I think the number is a lot higher than what people realize.
Yeah, shocking. And one thing that the Sikh community have always been proud of and renowned for and reputed for in a very positive way is their stance against injustice, against any persecutions of freedoms, etc. And of course, they do tend to take to the streets on a regular basis, and well done to them for doing so. But what they do face, of course, in particular in countries like India, which tend to operate a bit more of a totalitarian regime and an anti-democratic regime, is they often face violence and they face arrest. And this is exactly what has happened recently over the last day or two. In fact, in the last 24 hours, I did report a day or two ago about how that many members of the community were standing in protest, standing up for basic freedoms in the Punjab. And it turns out, yes, reports just filtered through overnight that police have now placed many of these freedom protest leaders under house arrest. And there are lots of well-known names here. These include former MP Simranjit Singh Mann, the Faridkot MP, recently elected Faridkot MP Sarabjit Singh Khalsa, and MP Amritpal Singh's father himself, who again we reported on yesterday. They're all placed under house arrest. This happened across in the Chandigarh region. So the report that's come out says depriving the Sikhs of exercising their right to stage peaceful demonstration, as they do on a regular basis, as is their democratic right. The police of Indian-administered Punjab on Tuesday, this is yesterday, arrested the entire pro-freedom Sikh leadership to deliberately torpedo the Grand Assembly scheduled to be held at the site of Wami Insaf Morcha, the national justice protest, which I reported on yesterday, which is also known as Bandi Singh Rihai Morcha, the agitation for the release of Sikh prisoners. They were actually protesting, demanding and highlighting the fact that demanding the release of these political prisoners.
Right.
And it took place at was planned to take place at the borders of Chandigarh and Mohali to mark the second anniversary of the launch of the protest. So to disperse the Sikhs while they were peacefully marching towards the official residence of Punjab Chief Minister to press their demands, The police, here we go again, also resorted to using water cannons. Again, it's winter, so it's cold, and they use water cannons. And here we go again, a cane charge. Yes, they use their canes, this well-known tactic of the Indian police. These are bamboo canes ribbed with iron. This is how they physically beat back protesters. Tear gas shells were also fired at the demonstrating Sikhs, and use of force left many Sikhs injured. Yeah, here we go again. Another peaceful democratic protest by the Sikh community is met with tear gas and water cannon and police charging with canes. So this protest was launched to press the demand for release of the Sikh political prisoners, including Jagtar Singh Hawara, Jagtar Singh Tara, Paramjit Singh Biora, Balwant Singh Rajwana, and Professor Devinder Pal Singh Bulla and Gurdeep Singh Kira, who've been languished in various jails of India for decades. And it's been going on, and this protest has been going on for at least 2 years. Now, Sikhs are sitting very peacefully at the protest sites to register their protest in a democratic way, as is their right, to demand the release of these Sikh political prisoners who have already completed their imprisonment, and yet they still remain in prison. Here we go again, the rule of law being once again ignored in India, as we regularly highlight. On its second anniversary, a grand gathering was called to intensify the protest as the Indian state continues to turn a blind eye towards the genuine demands of the Sikhs. While the Mohali police had fortified the entry and exit points into Chandigarh, the Chandigarh police had enhanced security arrangements and deployed additional forces on the borders. But several protesters still managed to enter the capital. Sikh leaders from across Punjab and other states were prevented from attending the gathering. While many were arrested by the police, some of the prominent leaders were put under house arrest. Besides, many Sikh activists who were on the way to Mohali to be part of the gathering were then harassed by police. So again, it's typical police standards. They know this protest happening. It was well announced in advance, and of course they've done a typical Indian tactic, which is, well, let's nip it in the bud, as they say. Let's put under arrest all the leaders so they can't turn up. Let's also harass anybody trying to get to the protest. Let's intimidate and harass them so they can't even get to the protest. This isn't democracy. This is a police state. This is what a police state does. It prevents lawful democratic protests, and this is what the Indian police have been up to. So, the Shiromani Akali Dal president and three-time MP Simranjit Singh Mann, Sikh Youth Federation Bhindranwala President Ranjit Singh Damdani Taxal, Dal Khalsa leader Dilbar Singh Gurdaspur, Faridkot MP Sarabjit Singh Khalsa, jailed Cousineau MP Amritpal Singh's father, Tarsim Singh, were amongst many who were placed under house arrest. There's some big names there. So these are very high-profile figures in the community who've been out there protesting peacefully and democratically, etc., etc. So again, James, it's shocking to report this. Narendra Modi always stands up and says, I lead the world's largest democratic nation, and yet here we are. This is a peaceful democratic protest, and it's a protest against the continued detention and effectively the unlawful detention and imprisonment of political prisoners who have served and completed their sentences and yet have not been released. What is going on in India? This isn't democracy in action. This is a totalitarian regime keeping its political prisoners and in prison and keeping and ensuring a democratic protest is not allowed, and anybody who stands up and tries to hold its government to account are then harassed and imprisoned themselves. They are arrested and imprisoned. This isn't democracy in action, James.
And that's something that we, referred to in the last story, as well as, countless others. And that is, again, the abuse of power when it comes to Modi, the BJP, and others within government in India. And for them to declare themselves a democracy is just a real joke. And it's an insult to true democracies around the world, Angus.
And this is why stories like this need to be highlighted, not just to the Western world, to actually inform and educate the Western world about the reality of what India is. India is not the world's largest democracy. It is sinking into a totalitarian state and a police state. That is really the reality that we need to highlight, but not just the Western world, but to the Indian population themselves. Those amongst the majority of the Indian population think they believe in that they live in a democratic society because they are not shown in their media. They are not shown the truth of what is actually happening within their own borders, within their own country. This is the reality of Punjab. If you stand up to the Indian government, this is what you face. And they think, there's just a bunch of terrorists or fringe elements up in the Punjab. Why should we care? Well, you should care, because one day when you realise that your government is running out of control and out of accountability, they will then turn on you and you'll find your own freedoms restricted. But there will be nobody left to stand up for your rights, because you didn't stand up for those in the Punjab. You didn't stand up for those in the minority whose rights are now being curtailed, their democratic rights. So when your own government starts turning on you and restricting your own rights, you will then not be able to stand up and prevent it, because there will be nobody left to stand up to shout out for your rights. So that's why it is so important. So as a result, Amritpal Singh, who again we talk about regularly, who sadly resides in jail in Assam, in Dibrugarh, he was elected last year to the Lok Sabha by a massive majority. In May 2024, he decided to run as an independent candidate for the Cousineau Sahib constituency in the Punjab. And his campaign was led by his family and supporters, because of course he remained in prison in Dibrugarh. And on the 4th of June, he won that election. And he was elected a member of the Lok Sabha. He defeated his nearest competitor of the Indian National Congress by a margin of nearly 200,000 votes. And it was the largest win and the widest margin in the history of the Cousineau Sahib constituency. That's how popular this guy was. So he was elected to the Lok Sabha. He's remained in prison. And yesterday he announced on X, he put up a post on X, and this actually was announced just before Christmas as well, but this supported his earlier announcement. He said, a huge Panthic gathering is being organised at Sri Muktsar Sahib on the Maggie Festival on the 14th of January, on the directions of Bhai Amritpal Singh, for the revival of the Akali Dal and the issues facing the Punjab. All the devotees from near and far are requested to attend the gathering. So what is this all about? Well, it turns out that Tarsem Singh, the father of Amritpal Singh, appealed to the people of Punjab to come in large numbers at that launch party on the January the 14th. What it is the official launch party of a new political party. It is designed essentially to take back control of Punjab politics for the Sikh community, because of course, as we reported and recently reported, when we analysed the structure and the failed structure of politics in the Punjab and how it's been infiltrated by the RSS, how the RSS have deliberately infiltrated to fragment it and break it apart and to put their own place people in there to dilute the voice of the Sikh community, to destroy effectively the voice of the Sikh community, to stop the Sikh community having any power or any control within its own region and within its own social community. So as a result, Amritpal Singh and his supporters are setting up a new political party, and January the 4th marks a date when they are appealing for people to turn up to support the launch of this party. And Amritpal Singh's father says, we appeal to the people of Punjab to come in large numbers at the Panthic gathering at Sri Muktsar Sahib on the 14th. We will be announcing a regional party to save Punjab and the Panth. A 5-member committee will be formed, which will be taking further decisions. The party will be launched on the January the 14th at the Sri Muktsar Sahib on the occasion of Maggie. A working committee will be announced, which will decide on the party constitution and other things. And he appeals to the people of Punjab to support the party to save Punjab from various issues like drugs, conversions, farmers. Of course, we talked about the farmers' protests, etc. So, of course, all the issues that we often highlight here on Satluj. And the Hindustan Times reported on this as well. They, of course, it was announced in a lot of the mainstream Indian media. Of course, they put their own spin on it, their own narrative, of course, because, of course, they fear Amritpal Singh. That's why he remains in jail under the NSA. And the Hindustan Times covered it as well. They said they called it radical Sikh preacher and jailed Cousineau Sahib MP Amritpal Singh. Of course, their narrative is he's a radical Sikh preacher, and they talked about it, that he was launching this new party, and it does include, of course, the son of PM Indira Gandhi's assassin Beant Singh, who also was elected to the Lok Sabha under the Faridkot constituency. And again, under a massive majority. And he actually was, his father was Shahid Beant Singh, one of the guys who assassinated Indira Gandhi. So again, the narrative that this actually, or the message it sends out, that this is why the Indian mainstream and the BJP are terrified, is because actually this guy whose father assassinated Indira Gandhi because of Operation Blue Star, that it shows how much support indirectly that assassin has in the Punjab. They're saying, yeah, Indira Gandhi was assassinated for a very good reason, is that she was responsible for the mass murder of tens of thousands of innocent Sikh men, women and children in the Golden Temple. And of course, then she wasn't responsible for the genocide that followed, but essentially her and her clan were responsible for that genocide in November that followed her assassination. So the Hindustan Times then interviews various people, but Tarsim Singh, the father of Amritpal, is also quoted in there saying, leaders of political parties, including the Shiromani Akali Dal, never let the concept of Miri Piri, a concept which means religion and politics go together in the Sikh faith. Right. And that's actually an interesting reflection, James, about what we were talking about in Canada and what we're lacking here in the West. And this is why we encourage those from the Sikh community to get involved in politics, because here the concept of Miri Piri marries religion and politics. This is why we need more Sikhs in Western politics, because we need more of the principles of the Sikh faith, which of course reflect all that is good about humanity and human morals. That's what seems to be missing in Western politics. And so we need more Miri Piri in Western politics. Anyway, I'm going for a slight tangent there. The president of the SGPC, this is Tarsim Singh speaking, the president of the SGPC is also elected by a particular family. Yes, we talked about that, the Badal family, by sending the name of their choice in an envelope. This has left the Sikh Sangat distraught. So what he's saying, Tarsim Singh, is highlighting what is very obvious and what we talked about here, James, regularly, is that Punjab politics, the SGPC, the Shiromani Akali Dal, which essentially is controlled by the SGPC, and in turn controlled by the Badal family, which in turn is controlled by the RSS. This does not reflect the Sikh community. This does not reflect the issues and does not stand up for the real issues that are affecting the Sikh community in the Punjab. And this is why there is a real vacuum. There is a real problem in Punjab politics, because those the politicians that are supposedly representing the community locally are losing power. It was seen in the Lok Sabha elections in May last year. Is that the mainstream parties, whether it's the Shiromani Akali Dal or whatever, they are losing power. They're losing any representation. Less and less people are turning out to support them. And we've even seen in the SGPC elections that less and less Sikh, those from the Sikh community are less and less from the community are registering for those elections, because the young particularly are saying, well, what's the point? They don't represent me. They don't represent the issues that I care about. So what's even the point of registering to vote for these very bodies that are supposed to represent the voice of the Sikh community? So in this vacuum, Amritpal Singh and his supporters have said, look, there is a problem here. Nobody is standing up and speaking for the genuine people of the Sikh community, the genuine Sikhs within our community. That is why Amritpal Singh is setting up his own party. He stood up as an independent candidate in the last general elections. He was elected with a massive majority, which in itself says that there is this vacuum and that there's all these hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the Punjab who at the moment have nobody representing their voice. So Amritpal has stood up and said, right, this is what the Punjab needs. It needs people like me to stand up. It needs a new party that actually genuinely represents the issues of the Sikh community and, of course, by extension, those of the Khalistan movement. And that is what Amritpal Singh represents. And this is what the new party will represent. So, James, I think this is a fantastic step forward. This is going to get Delhi, I think, quivering in its boots. I think the BJP and, of course, the RSS are now going to be fearing this. They're going to be thinking, this is a new party. And actually, strange enough, headed up by an MP who is a political prisoner in Dibrugarh jail. Yes, he, the very leader of this party, is a political prisoner held under the supposedly rule of law NSA, which is not. It's quite the opposite of that. But he is residing in jail under very questionable legal arguments. And yet he is now the successful leader of a new party to be launched on January the 14th. And this is a massive step forward for Sikh politics. It's a massive massive step forward for the people of Punjab, and of course, by extension, it is a massive step forward for the Khalistan movement in the Punjab itself. So I think a very positive step forward, James.
I think that it even extends beyond that, Angus, that it could be a very positive step for Hindus in the region, for Muslims, for Dalits, for Christians, because of the way that that the Sikh people bring everybody to a level of equality and respect. I think that it's going to be much far-reaching than just in Punjab. I think it's going to be a great catalyst for change in the entire country. So let's hope that that is the case. And for anybody who's watching our program and thinks that we're always picking on the India government and the BJP, the RSS, go to sites such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and you'll see that it's not just us. There is credible and real evidence directing that there is a lack of respect of human rights for minorities in India. So if you don't believe us, take to the internet and do some research on your own.
Absolutely. Very good point there, James. In fact, we are just the messengers. We're not a propaganda outlet. We are just the conduit to tell the truth. If you don't believe us, look at the research that we show you. Look at the organisations like, as you say, Amnesty International. They're the ones who are doing the genuine research. They are unbiased. They are independent. And all we're doing is passing that information on to our viewers, to our audience, hopefully in India as well, who obviously only see one side of the story through the Gaudiya media. That's all we are. We're not a propaganda outlet. We just try to relay the truth. That's what we stand for, James.
That's right.
So on that basis, let us move on to our comment section. And lots of wonderful comments. Thank you as always for those. We're running out of time, so I'm going to have to rush through these, unfortunately. First comment. This is, I like this comment. It's an interesting comment. Amritpal Singh says, Satluj TV channel is the best so far in Sikh affairs. Thank you for that comment. That is a wonderfully complimentary comment. I'm actually genuinely curious because, yeah, there are several Sikh channels out there and many of them have way more subscribers than we do. And of course, most of them, I think almost without exception, are Punjabi speaking channels. And so, of course, it's very difficult for me and James to sort of take a look at our, well, I won't even call them our competition. We all sit side by side with a common goal. We are all aligned. Of course, in reality, in terms of YouTube, we're sort of competing for your views. But ultimately, I don't see them as competition. I see them as colleagues, as people fighting the same fight. So we all should support each other. I'm actually genuinely interested in our audience's thoughts on this. How do you think we sit alongside? I haven't found very many other, in fact, I'm trying to think of any other English-speaking Sikh affairs channels. So yeah, let us know your thoughts on that. But Amritpal, thank you very much for that comment. I am genuinely interested in a wider audience's views on that one, James.
Absolutely. And just for reference, if you look at the way that we have Satluj TV spelled there versus the other spelling, it's actually Satluj. So there's two different spellings of that as well. So we're just going back to, talking about the different spellings of things when it's translated to English.
Yeah, well, again, it's Satluj, Sikhs, Punjab. I mean, here we go. We've been down that road.
I just thought I'd throw that in there.
So, but yeah, I think to claim that we're the best so far in Sikh affairs, I don't think we are. I think we're just different. I think they're probably better channels that look at more in-depth Sikh affairs because, of course, they are run by Sikhs who understand the issues in a much more nuanced depth. That's obviously what we can't do. But what we do bring, and what I hope James and I do bring, is a completely independent, a bit more of an objective view on Sikh affairs because, of course, not being Sikhs, we are Westerners. We are learning, as we keep saying, we're on this learning journey about what Sikhi is about, what the community is about, what the issue is about. And therefore, we give a very different perspective. And I hope that sits complementary to many of our colleagues in the other Sikh channels.
That's right.
And the Punjabi channels that sit out there. So, but thank you anyway for all that comment. S. Baines, this is a very important comment and a very philosophical comment. And I'll just quickly touch on it. And S. Baines says, state repression is constant in India. This is what happens in a tyrannical artificial state that has no strong internal cohesion, as the state's only interested in essentially power. It's the opposite of democracy. This is actually an important reflection on what India is, and not just India, but this is what is a reflection on artificial states. Yugoslavia actually is a good example of this, that ended up balkanizing, it ended up breaking apart. And this is why we keep saying that India has the potential to break apart, because it is an artificial construct, exactly what you say. It is only brought together, not through its own internal natural cohesion, it's brought together almost by force. It was brought together essentially by force by the British Empire, which one it was in turn, this colony was handed over to the Brahmins in 1947, who have continued to remain and retain control. And this is what's happening. So it's only kept together almost by force, not by a natural want or desire to stay together. And I think this point, I think your comment is absolutely bang on this. I think this is what's important about this comment, is it highlights, James, why India really is always constantly under threat. It is a relatively young nation. It's only been around 70 odd years, 77 years or something. But again, it's only been held together. It was held together originally by the British Empire, by literal physical force, and it is only kept together by Brahmanical control through the caste system. But already, and over decades, we are seeing all these individual elements still trying to break apart. And this is why, inevitably, like the Soviet Union, like Yugoslavia, like many other artificial constructs, it is probable and likely that India will indeed break apart. And we think that Khalistan will be that first domino to fall, James.
Absolutely. And I think that there's an opportunity, as it does, for them, much like the European Union, to have some type of collective trade agreements and to work together as a bloc that way. But I think that the autonomy of each state could be very beneficial as well.
Absolutely, and as you rightly say, S. Baines, repression is the only way that they can keep control. That is why repression exists in India, because they're terrified. This is why they're so scared of the Khalistan movement, because they know it's inevitable. They know they're fighting a losing battle, and they are getting increasingly desperate to stop it. Hence the murder of people like Najjar and potential murder of Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon, amongst many others. Okay, let's move on. R. Rum Kisoon says, most Sikhs do not want Khalistan. And then actually I'll jump another one. And Gary Bassi says, not many Sikhs in Punjab like Khalistan in Punjab, so it's just a dream. Please don't stir the pot. Thanks. Yeah, thank you for these. But actually, how do you know that most Sikhs don't want Khalistan? You don't know that for a fact. Because there has been no referendum. There has been no official way of actually asking the community. And this is why there is a vacuum of democracy in the Punjab. And why people like us exist, because we're saying, look, there are many people who support Khalistan, even in the Punjab. We know this for a fact. And we know for a fact that there are hundreds of thousands in the diaspora who fled in fear from the Punjab who support the concept of Khalistan. So genuinely, why do you think, people around you might not support it? That is their democratic right. But how do you know that most people in Punjab don't want Khalistan? You don't know that for a fact. The only way that can ever be determined by fact is by a referendum. That is what we're campaigning for. That is why India should hold a referendum. If it is indeed a democratic nation, as it claims to be, this is the only way to determine. And if you believe that most Sikhs don't want Khalistan, support the argument for a referendum, and you will prove your point. Let's prove it once and for all. Let's have that referendum and let's find if there is indeed support for Khalistan. And if there isn't support for Khalistan, if a referendum is held and there is no support for Khalistan, we, James and I, will stand up and say, yes, we support the fact that there is not enough support for Khalistan and it should not be established. Absolutely, we'll say that now. If there is a genuine, legitimate, legal referendum that rules that Khalistan does not have the support, then fine, we will respect that. That is how democracy works, James.
And it's all about people having the right to place their votes and to speak their voice. And that's what it comes down to, Angus.
And Gary Bassi, when you say, please don't stir the pot, I'm afraid we will, because we believe in democracy. This is what happened in Quebec, in Canada. This is what happened in Scotland, here in the UK, is that nationalists demanded referendums. They had referendums. That's what we do in democracies. They lost those referendums, and those results are then respected. That's why we're stirring the pot, as you call it, because we demand democracy in the Punjab. And as we said, hold a referendum, support a referendum. If you genuinely believe that there is not enough support for Khalistan, then you have nothing to fear. Simple as that. Right. Coombs says, nicely touched on the importance of December. This was James. This is you, James. You gave a great summary of why December was so important for the Sikh community, as indeed it is. We didn't actually mark, maybe we should have done a couple of days ago, of course, January the 6th was the birthday of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And of course, we didn't mark that on the programme. It was actually jumped up by other issues that we had to report on. But indeed, absolutely, this time of year, very important times of the year for the Sikh community. So thank you for highlighting that. And of course, December, did mark the Battle of Chamkaur, in which the 10th Guru's sons were martyred in terrible circumstances, which we haven't actually covered. Maybe we should as a news story. So thank you for that. James, anything on that you want to comment?
No, I think we'll move along. We're way over time here, because I could go on forever, Angus.
Indeed, couldn't we both? Let's rush on. You're absolutely right. Think and unite. This is an interesting comment. God has ordered Khalistan to be formed. The countries that helped this happen will be recognised. Now, this is an interesting comment for me personally, because I remember last year in a meeting with Tony Mangat, who essentially runs and controls Satellite TV. And we sat around a table with the management team discussing Satluj and where it was going and what we should talk about. And we, of course, talked a lot about Khalistan and his belief and why he believed Khalistan should be established and why it will be established. And we talked about, I gave my opinions. Well, I thought it probably in reality might take 10 to 20 years, but it will happen. But I think it will take 10 to 20 years. And he looked me squarely in the eye. He said, no, it will happen in the next 5 years. I know it will happen because God will make it happen, and God has brought you to me. And he actually believes that and of course by extension James as well, we were brought to this cause by God. We are effectively tools of God. And he genuinely believes that Khalistan will happen in the next few years because this is what God has ordained. And his eyes were glowing with passion. And I believed him. And I genuinely believed him. And this is why I think I've become so wedded to this cause, is because clearly there is something going on. We're seeing it around the world. We're seeing in the Western world how the Western politicians are uniting and aligning behind this. We're seeing it right across social media, across society itself. And we are seeing this mass movement, and the Sikh community are getting mobilised towards Khalistan. So when you say God has ordered Khalistan to be formed, I believe you. I actually believe you, because I think, we are seeing incredible things happening. We are seeing the incredible movements and the weight that is falling behind these movements. It's an incredible thing to witness and be a part of. And it's a privilege for me and James to be a part of that. Is it not, James?
It certainly is, Angus. And it all started from my end was I just felt a need to speak about Khalistan and explain to the Western world what it was about in my initial video series that I put on my personal TikTok. And then it made its way over to Savage and the management team there, and they liked the series and the response that it received. And we've been working together on, delivering a message ever since. So it's, something brought it together.
Yeah, so I think we've got some interesting times ahead of us, and thank you for that comment. That's I think you're on the nose, as I say, with that comment. So, of course, says Trent Frank story.
Dinner in Khalistan, Angus.
I look forward to that day, of course. Simrat Kaur says Trent Frank's story seems like the Christmas gift from the US Santa. Indeed, as we celebrated Christmas, couldn't have put it better myself. Oh, James, here we go. Daljit G Human says, please write Sikh instead of sick. Oh, we'll do our almost monthly apology for this. We don't do the subtitles. YouTube generates the subtitles through its algorithm, and it's the pronunciation of Sikh and Sikh, and unfortunately it interprets Sikh as S-I-C-K, not S-I-K-H. Apologies, we don't control the subtitles, so that is our monthly reminder. Apologies, our monthly apology. We're not behind that, so you just have to use your common sense and know that we're talking about S-I-K-H. And talking of which...
And the AI systems are working on it as they start to recognize the context and the content around the words. AI is going to be, hopefully in the next 6 months to a year, maybe even sooner, be able to recognize it and make that distinction.
We can keep our fingers crossed that is going to happen. And Mr. Mann wades into the whole argument, and I think this is slightly tongue-in-cheek. Let's start calling it Punjab. Yes, indeed. If I remember, I will. I've always called it Punjab, but I'll try and remember to call it Punjab. Let's not go down that one again, James. And then Ashley Kandar, one of my favourite critics of the channel, comes in with a cracking comment here. Sikhs should celebrate Christmas because it's the British that kept Sikhism alive, and everyone knows that Jesus was born in Birmingham. I'm not even going to answer that one, but thank you, Ashley, for that comment. That did make me chuckle. Right, Critics Corner. We've got a good one here. This is Vinodamji. And this was a few days ago, actually a while ago, he put this one up. But this person says, and I do, ironically, I agree with much of this comment. The West is a bunch of hypocrites. You talk about WMDs in Iraq, you talk about Libya and Gaddafi, absolutely right. Syria, what happened in there, same thing in Ukraine. We go around destroying countries and then tell others what to do in the name of humanity. And then in the Punjab, you talk about how the British Empire took the Punjab, etc., and took control of that. We talk about how we took away the Cousineau diamond, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, that was 1919, an absolute stain on the British Empire. I agree with you on that. And then, of course, the partition 1947, etc., etc. So the first part of the comment is all about the evils of the West and the evils of the British Empire. And funnily enough, yes, I absolutely agree with you. We often call out the hypocrisy of the West, and many of those, WMDs in Iraq, absolutely. 1 million of us here in the UK took to the streets to march in protest against Tony Blair and his ridiculous sojourn into Iraq with George Bush Jr. It was appalling. I absolutely agree with you. It's totally hypocritical. We, the people, did not support most, if not all, of these acts. We didn't support them. The majority of the British population did not support them. The only people who did were brainwashed by our own media. Yes, even our own media does the same as the Godi media at times when it sits behind these ridiculous events. Yeah, the only supporters were brainwashed by it, and this is the danger of the media and the mainstream media. Why you should always treat mainstream media with a lot of contempt, really, more than anything else. So yes, actually, Vinod Damji, I totally agree with you, and this is why you should stand with people like us who bring the truth. All we do is try to bring the truth and hold all of our governments to account. We hold the British government, the Canadian government, the US government, we hold them to account. That's what you do in a democracy. And in India, you can't do that. We do it from outside India, but within India, you can't do it. That's what we stand. That's why we are blocked in India. Ask yourself the question, why are we blocked in India? Because we are trying to hold your government to account by bringing the truth, etc., etc. Right. What else do you say? Western propaganda is divide and rule. No, it is to some degree. Western governments, and certainly the British Empire, was responsible for divide and rule. Absolutely. And where we see it, we call it out. And what you also say, Sikhs who were living in other parts of India or even other parts of Punjab were not affected by Hindus causing any trouble. Then, it's the Indian government. I think my answer to all this, the Indian government operates a divide and rule. We've put out the evidence on a daily basis of their divide and rule tactic. That is why Hindus are fighting Muslims, Muslims are fighting Sikhs, and Muslims are fighting Hindus, etc. Because it's the Hindutva propaganda. It is the Hindutva way of operating. They deliberately sow division, and it's the Sikh community and people like us that are highlighting what's going on. Don't turn on us for highlighting the fact of what's going on. All we're doing is highlighting who is actually creating division today in India and across the diaspora. It is the Indian government, and in reality it's the RSS and Hindutva ideology that is dividing it, James.
Absolutely, and I can't add really anything to that. I think you've covered it well, that we know there's a hypocrisy there. We know that there is a lot of accountability that has been overlooked or hidden when it comes to the West. So absolutely, I agree with a lot of what was said there.
So Vinodamji, I think my message to you, thank you for your comment. It's a very good comment, and as it turns out, I agree with most of your comment. So we're not the enemy. All we are doing, as I said earlier in the show, we are just a conduit to get the truth. All of our common enemy are that 1%, I often refer to the 1% of humanity who are behind all the wars, who are behind the control, who are behind all the evils of the world. It's not the 99%. We're all just ordinary human beings who just want to live peacefully in our lives and just get on with our lives peacefully with our fellow human beings. It's the 1% who are the enemy of the 99%. That is who you should be turning against, not against people like us. And all we're doing is trying to unite people like yourselves with us and saying, look, turn your attention on those who are trying to control and destroy society. So let's move on, James, and our final set of comments. And this is I can't go through these individually, but this was really a summary. And if you see your name there, great, thank you for that. There were loads and loads of comments, of course, leading up to Christmas, saying Happy Christmas, and then loads of comments from many of you, and certainly many of our regulars. And thank you. Hopefully you'll see your name on this list here, wishing us a very happy new year, and of course wishing our audience a very happy new year. It has been an honour and a privilege, as I often say, to sit in this seat, and James likewise, to present to you guys, to our wonderful audience, and particularly to our regular audience who've been loyal, so loyal over this last year, and hopefully into 2025. And your happy new year wishes are really, really genuinely received and received with a load of warmth, and they are returned with a similar warmth and sincerity back to you. Every member of our audience and our new members of our audiences, welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. And it has been, as I say, an absolute pleasure to bring all these issues to our community and to receive your comments and the comments that have poured in over this last year by the hundreds and the thousands, with so many interesting points of view, so many interesting comments that you've made, correcting us when we've got it wrong, and of course our critical comments, which we of course do love to talk about and have a bit of a joke and a bit of banter about, etc., James. So as I say, James, it's been a pleasure, has it not?
It certainly has, Angus, and we look forward to an amazing 2025 ahead. We appreciate those who have been with us over the last year and those who are joining us now and will be with us over the next year. So thanks again. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to the channel, to share it with all your friends, and let's get our numbers up so we can continue bringing this message far and wide, Angus.
Indeed, and that will bring our show to a close for the day. But I would just add in that there is going to be no perspectives tomorrow as usual, and no podcast tomorrow, because on Friday we will be bringing you a Satledge special, and I can't tell you anything about it yet for security reasons, but do keep an eye out for our Friday show, and we'll have a Satledge special for you for that one, so keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for all the comments, thank you for all the support. Don't forget you can message us directly at message@satledgetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention that you don't want to put in the public domain. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. You've been watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me, and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
We will see you next time.